All right, there we go. That's my bad. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? How can you hear me?
Yeah, that was me. My stupid voice meter. It showed my microphone connected, but it wasn't plugged in. And then eventually it turns red, but I didn't look. And even though it was like detected it, even when after you plug it in, it doesn't like auto, and you have to go select it. So the whole intro, well, it wasn't there. As I was saying, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. This is Great Work Launchpad 39, Shadow Work 37, Fear or Love 22, Tree of Evil 3, Parental, Abandonment. And yeah, welcome back, co-host Brandon Spencer. Might not have been here, but he's here. Whether hurricane or tornado, he will make it.
Well, hell, I can only stay for 30 minutes since I'm on like caregiver duty. So,
Okay,
yeah, has got some responsibilities that I can't neglect here. So, yeah,
cool. Hopefully everything's going well so far.
yeah. It's just like every hour, hell, I have to get the patient up to do some exercises. So, yeah, it's gonna be a long 24 hours.
Damn, every hour. All right. Well, good luck with that. All right. Oh yeah, my paper, my stuff. So, what are we talking about? Oh, I'll do my little spiel about some little promo. How to be the true media. Talking about the great work here. Trying to get people involved. You know, that's what the rocket ship's about. It's about getting you ignited, taking in the truth, embodying that force of love, and working to create freedom. So getting launched into the great work. And the great work's about ending evil, ending our enslavement. If you don't know that's the condition, then you got stuff to learn. But when you do learn it, well, then you gotta engage in the great work if you know what it is and how it's important and how to be the true media. How to become the true media is one way you can do that. Mark Passio offers this A to Z training if you're like not really good with computers. If not, you can go figure it out on your own and get some tutorials and things online. And yeah, either way, go learn it yourself or be guided by a master in the great work. And yeah, there it is. It's not open right now, but you can join next year. Right now, it's ongoing, so you won't be able to join. And in the end of February, in a month from now, there is Funnel 5, freedomundernaturallaw.com. Check out Funnel 5, titled Ignite Hearts and Minds. And Brandon's a speaker there. So without further ado, let's get into what we were talking about here. We're talking about the Tree of Evil. And the past two episodes, we went into the Tree of Evil, explaining what evil is. It's a synonym for immorality, wrong, which are thefts, which is violence, and ultimately it produces the condition of slavery. When enough people are doing it, when it's being done repeatedly, then we all find ourselves in a degraded condition of enslavement. And the fruits, this thing, here we go. The fruits are that evil. That's what's produced in the end. Without the leaves, you're not going to get fruits, and that's the ignorance. Ultimately, it's the ignorance of objective morality, because that's what's required for evil to persist, is the ignorance of objective morality and no one doing anything about it. But no one's going to do anything about it if they don't know what objective morality is. So you need objective morality to know that what's happening is not in alignment with objective morality. You need to care about objective morality as well. And those leaves come from branches, and the branches are this fear of owning responsibility. And it's the responsibility of not only not doing things that are immoral yourself, but also the responsibility of not wanting the responsibility to help uplift humanity and thereby uplift your own condition and the collective condition of everyone on this planet by doing the work of moral education, ultimately at the top of that level of what is required to create true freedom is the knowledge of objective morality. And then there's peripheral stuff like this, talking about shadow work, the work on ourselves that we need to do, aligning with the force of fear or love and choosing one over the other once you know the difference. Just like morality, once you know the difference between right and wrong, you choose right over the wrong. So there's this fear of owning that responsibility because of all the work and the time and the sacrifice that's required to get involved. And people just don't want to do that work, so they run away from it. And they don't want to have anything to do from it, so they fear it. That aversion is a fear. And we talked about self-loathing last week, and that's from a lack of self-respect, an undeveloped self-respect. So undeveloped, this whole point of the shadow work, looking at ourselves, reflecting upon ourselves, introspection, self-reflection, that's that self-respect. And that's what allows you to develop self-love and self-care, and then emanate that outwards to encompass more beings into that care and that love, that agape, to reach that universal love, that true care for and compassion for others, so that you not only care about your own freedom and independence and well-being, but you care about the well-being and freedom of everyone. And if anyone knows what the law of freedom is, well, you know you're not getting there by yourself, so you better care about everyone else also being enslaved and wanting them to be free, because it's not going to happen just for you. It's going to only happen with everyone together. And there's the truism phrase of, as one suffers, we all suffer. And there was another thing I was thinking about, but I slipped my mind. That our freedom is tied to the ignorance of others, and so hence the willful ignorance. And your part in restoring true freedom is this great work, and not wanting that responsibility, but taking on and bearing the weight of that responsibility, bearing the burden of it. And you have to have self-love for yourself to even get to that point, because a lot of these people who don't want to own that personal responsibility, well, they don't want it because they don't care enough. If you care enough, it's not that you want, oh yeah, I want that weight, just pour it on me, just put all those tons on me and just put me down into the ground so that I'm like being compressed into the ground. That's not, we don't want that. We want the ends that burden will produce. We want freedom. We care about the truth. So we bear that responsibility because we care enough about ourselves and about others. And when you don't care that you are even enslaved and you won't do anything about it, which is doing the great work, then you're in a state of self-loathing, an aspect of self-loathing, an aspect of self-hatred. So that's what the great work is to ultimately get others to do that. What you've done is developing that self-respect and that self-love and that self-care so that they can engage it themselves. And it has a multiplicity effect, a snowballing effect. So before we get into parental abandonment, Brennan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I mean, you always cover so many points, hell again, because I'm like real tired. The knowledge of morality, like you said, it's hard for us to, you know, understand these concepts if we don't have a definitive definition of what's moral, what's good, what's bad and evil in behaviors. So that is, have the fundamental, understanding. Then once you have that knowledge, then you can start to apply it. You can start to analyze how your own behaviors. You can see how these behaviors in other people. Then you can start to understand how what you're talking about, how with these, how how these diagrams and how with these, depictions. But without that knowledge of how morality, without that, simple, basic, common sense understanding, it's going to be hard to understand how what we are talking about and how these concepts.
Yeah, for sure. You gotta have that knowledge. You gotta gain that truth, or else We lost in the weeds a little bit there. So we'll get into parental abandonment. So that's what the image is here. Got that image about, it's a child's room. You got the toys there, you got the teddy bear, but it's all in a decrepit, decaying state. You got the room falling apart. It's like an abandoned, post-apocalyptic kind of looking room. So it's totally abandoned. And that's the imagery we're going for here, is that something that's been abandoned, totally abandoned, just left to decay and go into that involutionary force that I talked about in my latest presentation on Chaos and Order, Law of Freedom, Part 8. And we've been talking about here and there related to the force of fear or love, this chaos and order, involution, stagnation, and evolution, or fear or love, and other polaric, I don't know the word, other symbolic means of looking at things in a polarity that represent these two ways of, these two pathways and these two outcomes that can be generated. So that was the image that I have for the abandonment. And so we're not talking about a child was totally left on their own to fend and dumped into nature and totally abandoned and, in a disheveled state, or they're completely poor or something like that. We're talking about, so if you look at the tree of evil, right, we have the self-loathing, leads to the fear of that owning that responsibility, and the leaves of ignorance, of morality, of objective morality, and then the production of the evil. Well, all those are stemming from a parental abandonment. If you just look at the top layer of the evil, which is immorality and theft and violence, what kind of people are going to engage in immorality, whether they know they are doing it or not? They're engaging in it. I can bet you 99.999% guarantee that their parents did not raise them in objective morality, because 99.99% guarantee the parents didn't even know it themselves. So first they had to know it, then they could teach it, but they didn't even know it because they were unraised, and they're raising the unraised, and that's the way it's been going on for thousands of years. So all the people who do immorality, it's mostly not because they're consciously aware of what is immoral, that they have a developed conscience and know the difference, the definitive objective difference between right and wrong, but then choose to not exercise that conscience and go against it. It's not that they know what is immoral, and are choosing it just because they want to be immoral. For the majority, it is that they think they're doing good, and it's not. They're on the checkerboard floor, that Freemasonic first tracing board, and they are not getting off of it because they don't have the means to get off it. Well, they have the means within their capacity as a human being, but they're not getting off of it because the only way to get off of it is through that moral knowledge, where you can see what the squares actually are and then choose to not step on the dark ones, which represent that negative pathway of immorality. So everyone who's doing immorality, and even those of us who are not, we were not properly raised, because we were not raised in what is objectively moral and immoral either. We did not have the definitive objective difference between what is right and what is wrong. And along our journey through life, we gained some awareness of information. We came across something sparked our interest, and we got into something. It could have been David Icke or Alex Jones or Jordan Maxwell. Something we came across, some book we read. It doesn't matter what it is, but something led us on the journey, and then eventually we find people who are, hopefully, you find someone who is presenting the knowledge of what is objective morality. And then you reach that point where you have the understanding of objective morality. But when we started off, before we got to that point where we gained the objective knowledge between the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong behavior, we were abandoned, and then we had to, with the help of others, raise ourselves to, as Mark Passio terms it, cosmic adulthood. So prior to that, we were behaving as infants, and that is what someone who doesn't want responsibility, who has insecurities, and that's part of the self-loathing, where you don't know yourself, you don't know the powers you have of your consciousness and what is possible, and you're insecure. And if you do something wrong, you don't want to take ownership of it. You don't want a responsibility. And so you don't want responsibility as a child. And you're ignorant of many things. So all these are hallmarks of a childlike mindset. And that's what we are all in, is a childlike mindset, because we are all unraised in consciousness due to not being raised in the knowledge of moral truth, objective morality. So that's the main way we were talking about this abandonment. So it can be, yes, you can be physically abandoned, more akin to that chair, that image of being totally abandoned and destitute and poverty. You can mentally abandoned, weren't raised to think properly. So psychologically abandoned in the mental capacity or the emotional capacity. Maybe emotional regulation, you weren't taught how to regulate your emotions. You weren't taught to care about moral truth or to only care about yourself. As long as you can get away with it, you can do anything you want. So yes, in the sense that what reality allows and receiving negative consequences, yeah, that's how it works. As if no one's going to catch you, then you can do it and get away with it. It doesn't mean you should do it. It doesn't mean it's right to do. It just means that you're going to get away with it, and then you're going to get whatever the thing that you wanted to get out of that. But our parental abandonment is mostly in, or what I've been talking about, is not instilling these values, the principles of moral truth. So when we are not raised in these values of moral truth, well, then our parents failed us. They abandoned us in some capacity. Because, as I mentioned, their parents didn't raise them in this capacity, and on and on and on for millennia. But when you don't raise someone in moral truth and its importance and caring about it, then you're making them remain unraised and unevolved in consciousness. Because that's what ultimately the evolution of consciousness is all about. The most determining factor in the evolution of consciousness is whether you know the definitive objective difference between what is right and what is wrong. And I had a slide, a good quote from Mark Passio in my Natural Law, the Science of Morality, Part 4 presentation, where that's essentially what he says, is that's what it means to be truly evolved in consciousness, is knowing natural law, objective morality. And I think he mentioned something about self-knowledge as well. And that's what we're talking about here. All this shadow work is all self-knowledge. So this is truly at the critical thing, is this self-knowledge and responsibility and having this knowledge of objective morality and then caring about it and doing the work on yourself to get rid of the excuses and get to the point where you're going to become part of this effort, this great work to propagate and promulgate and propel freedom forward into greater degrees, to diminish the degrees of enslavement that we currently have. So when our parents failed to raise us this way, in these values of moral truth, the highest values there are, they're letting us be enslaved. And that's what anyone who's not doing the great work, you're just letting yourself be enslaved, you're letting your children be enslaved, you're letting your friends be enslaved. You're just like, okay, whether you know it or not, it's like, all right, enslavement, continue. I'm not going to do anything about it. And that's what not doing the great work is, and that's what our parents do by not even presenting us with the possibility of even choosing to do that work, because we don't even know the importance of morality, because we don't even know what objective morality is. So we are being abandoned to slavery. The parents are not protecting the child from the enslavement or trying to fend it off or defend their children from that enslaved condition. They're just saying, well, they're not aware of this, but it's saying, we're enslaved and I'm not going to do anything about it. So, hey, kid, enjoy your enslavement. I'm not protecting you. I'm not defending you. I'm not trying to protect you. I'm not trying to defend you. I'm not trying to change it. Just, there you go. And that's that. Once you understand all this, then you can really think of, yes, they're ignorant of it. And how much do you actually care? Even if you're ignorant of something, that's the condition and you're not seeing it for what it is, there's this lack of care, and the lack of care for you, to not even lack of care for themselves, lack of care for you as a child. We're talking about our parents. And even in the case where if you gain this knowledge and then you try to talk to them about it, and maybe they're going to not even care to listen to you. And if they do listen, then they're still not going to care enough to do anything about it at whatever age they are. It's never too late to start. So this ignorance as an excuse, oh, well, they don't care. Oh, they would care. You could come up with like, oh, they would care if they knew. Yeah, but go ahead and try. You can even tell them they might care enough to listen, or they're just going to like, blah, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear the negative, and they don't want to. It's that fear of responsibility coming in where you're going to try to remove them from that negative state, and then the fear of responsibility is going to kick in. Whoa, I'm going to have to do something with that knowledge. I'm going to have to change myself. No. Push away, deny. No, shut up. You're a negative Nelly. Get away from me. You're wrong. Those ego defenses come in. But even if that's not their reaction, you're not going to have them likely get past that self-loathing barrier. They're still not going to care about themselves enough to get involved and try to do something or embark on that spiritual journey, that knowledge quest, that path of truth to gaining more knowledge to understand the whole condition and the solution and why it's important. So they're likely not going to embark on that. That's why the excuse of, oh, well, they don't care enough just because they're ignorant. Even if you try, like, it might work, but probably not, because there's all this false conditioning present that they haven't overcome. And that's what this self-knowledge and the self-work and the shadow work is all about, is working on yourself to get over those limitations and barriers. So this responsibility, the parents' responsibility to nurture and protect and teach their child, has not been fulfilled. They're abandoned in that responsibility themselves. So they have failed in that responsibility to properly nurture, protect, and teach the child everything I've just been talking about. And so that's another way that we're all abandoned by our parents, because they have not protected us. They have not taught us. We've talked about the teaching, and I just talked about this aspect of protecting us, that they're not protecting us. They're not doing anything to protect or to fend off or defend us against the enslavement. It's just, we're just immersed in it, and they're not doing anything about it. I'll pass it to you, Brandon, if you want to add anything before moving on.
Yeah, the sad reality about it is most parents just think, because I'm providing, the standard means of living, shelter, food, so called, government schooling, clothes, that they think that, like that is the pinnacle and the apex of being a true, loose terms good parent. But they're not really, like you say, giving you the correct nurturing. They're not really protecting you. They're not, filling those healthy emotional, psychological, spiritual, and mental needs, and true form of her development. When it comes to being not just a true parent, but a true good, like individual. And they definitely aren't giving them, how the knowledge of what's good and the knowledge of what's, how wrong, because they lack that, how themselves. So, unfortunately, it's that cycle, that keeps, repeating. Just like, how this right here is a cycle. You have the roots, he'll turn into the trunk creates the branches create the leaves better fruit, and then that cycle just continues. And hell, that's the problem. Until there is knowledge of this incorrect immoral cycle, then there's no way of, getting to the correct moral cycle. So, hell, without that knowledge, then there is no chance for change to, how to happen within the individual and to happen within the parent. And you see, how these parental forms of abandonment, sadly flourish in many, different aspects. How just like you talk about, the child sees the parent how not caring, and then they pick up, and then they themselves, hell, for as they get older, they decide not to care. Hell, decide to not care to break the cycle. Decide how not to care to, truly educate themselves. And then two, hell, you have the illusion of good. How that's something that a lot of people, fall into too. How you brought this up the first time we talked, and it's easy to be fooled on what you think good is, or what you believe good is, or what you feel that good is, without the true objective common sense knowledge of what good is defined as, and what it actually means into her reality. And if that isn't installed into any child as they grow up, and they can be fooled to, to believe that they're actually doing good, and sadly they are not. And on that note, hell, I've got to take my leave because my hell alarm is going off. So,
All right, cool.
yeah, hell, thanks. And
Thanks for coming by.
yeah, yeah, hell, I'll be here next week.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
All right,
Peace.
same to you. Peace out.
All right. Yeah, that illusion of good, talking about evil, I think it was 2 weeks ago. It's a lot of the ways that people are sold on just not even knowing. They're sold on doing the evil, doing the immorality, or supporting it. And that's what we have in our society with authority, aka government, is people are sold on the illusion of good that that the government represents. Oh, well, government's good. We need it. We need this thing and this thing and this thing that government or the people that work for government provide. And without authority, without this control and this seeming order, this order that is being provided by the system of authority, this system of control, then, well, things would just be worse. So it's like a comparative, an automatic, intuitive, comparative assessment that without it, it would be worse, therefore it's good, therefore it's better. If it's better, then it's good, or it's gooder than the alternative. But they don't even know what actual good is. They're just looking at it in terms of better relative to something that is worse. So it's like Trump versus Biden, Trump versus Obama, whatever. One might be better in some ways and worse in other ways, but people are going to focus on, well, this one's better than this one, so that's the good guy and that's the bad guy. So this I guess, false reductionism, where through a comparative assessment, you're going to apply an inaccurate label, characterization, a categorization of something goes in the category of good, and then something else goes in the category of bad or evil, because you're looking at comparatively as better or worse. The better goes in the category of good, the worse goes in the category of bad. But it doesn't mean the thing that is better is actually good. It's just this, the way I could term it is this, like I said, this false reductionism of incorrect categorization and the application of words without taking into consideration an accurate definition of that word. So moving on into parental abandonment, the parents do not provide the moral knowledge to protect themselves in a dangerous environment. They are manipulated and controlled, and the children become so as well. Many people don't like the United States, especially regarding the Second Amendment. But it is wonderful that the people who tried to create something that was better, not something that was actually good, it was only good in this false categorization of something that was better. The United States of America was this dream, this promise of striving towards this better way. And the Second Amendment was part of that, to make sure that the government would never take away the ability for the people who are striving for freedom to maintain whatever level of freedom they could achieve at that time. And other places in the world could only dream of having the potential for freedom that the Second Amendment brings, and they don't understand it. They're anti-gun. Actually, they're pro-gun, but they're pro the authoritarian evil bastards having the guns, and not pro individuals who are moral having guns or any weapon. Pass your jokes about infinity gauntlets at Death Stars for everybody. Not that those things should exist, but if one person has it, then like if the government has it, then individuals seeking to maintain or pursue freedom should also have it as a means, as being on par, on the same level of defense against the same level of threat. So when someone has a certain level of threat, advancements in technology, then you should have also a matching level of compensatory force, we could say, to match that threat. Because if they're here and you're there, well, then they can just, override you. I don't find the accurate word, but to overflow, stomp on you. I'm grasping for the word, but it's not coming to my mind. So in this aspect of, this part of this, how parents are not raised and not able to, they don't even have the moral knowledge to protect themselves in a dangerous environment. They don't even have, even without the moral knowledge, they're not even being allowed the physical technological devices on par with the system of control to be able to match the force and have a counterbalance to it. And all you have to do is think of the Matrix, and how in the first Matrix it's about what is the Matrix. Well, Morpheus says it straight up. The Matrix is a system of control to turn you into a slave, right? The battery. Well, that's what authority is. This is all an allusion to authority. It's an allegory to authority. The system of authority is a system of control. That's what it's all about, is what you are allowed to do and what you are not allowed to do. That's what the government and people in authority, you could call it something else. You could call it kingship or queenship or monarchy. We're all talking about the system of authority, just in different flavors of authority. And they get to decide what you are allowed to do. You're allowed to drink alcohol, but you're not allowed to smoke cannabis. You're allowed to smoke cannabis, but you're not allowed to grow cannabis without a license coming from us, the law creators, because we're higher than, we're just like the whatever means, force, potential, whatever is behind the creation of the universe that allows for there to be laws, or created the laws of the universe. Well, they're equating themselves with the same power of, well, our dictates, we're calling them laws. just like the laws of nature, the laws of the universe, how the fundamentals of reality function. Well, now we're designating that society will function in this way, and we are creating these things called laws as how society must function. So you're allowed to do this, and you're not allowed to do that. And some things you can do, but you have to get our permission. And if you don't get our permission, then you're not allowed to do it. And then you're a bad person, you're immoral, you're a criminal, and we're going to come after you with our goons. And that's another aspect of this parental abandonment. Think of all the police and military out there who just follow orders, sold on the illusion of good, again, this illusion of good. And they follow the orders that go against objective morality because their parents did not raise them. So the system of control is perpetuated by the agents of control. Again, we can look at the matrix, the agents of control, who make sure that the system keeps running smoothly and there's no rebels like in Star Wars. Well, the people of Zion were the rebels trying to fight for their freedom, just like the rebels in Star Wars fighting for freedom against a system of control seeking to impose greater degrees of enslavement upon them. And in Matrix, it was really ratcheted up because you were physically in a pod enslaved with your energy being harnessed to power the machine world. And inside, everyone was under mental enslavement, buying into the false reality construct. And that's what we have. You know, in my earlier work, I talk about this, the reality versus unreality. The unreality is this false perception of reality, of people not seeing how things actually work. And they think that, oh, this is the way it works, and this is what's good, and this is what's wrong, and it should be this way, and they're not living in actual reality. They don't see the truth. They're living in falsity, and that's the unreality. So there's also the trauma of parental failure. Because you were failed by your parents in this way, even though you don't even recognize it, you're not even conscious of it, there's this subconscious protection and unworthiness and self-loathing, hence the second layer of self-loathing, that because you weren't raised properly, they are not protecting you, they're not nurturing you, they're not teaching you the things that ultimately matter the most, the values of moral truth. Well, the subconscious, there's this deep nested subconscious unworthiness and self-loathing that you're not worthy of being free from enslavement, because it's all around us, and whether we can actually define it and categorize it properly is apart from the recognition of something being wrong, that things are wrong, even though you're trying to be convinced that they're right. And so many people recognize that, like, taxes aren't right. And so at a subconscious level, there's like this aspect of things are wrong and I'm being forced to just live with it and accept it. So just accepting wrongdoing being done to you, just being immersed in a system, in a society, in a way of life where you are being wronged, well, that's not going to promote a high sense of value and worth in yourself. That's going to make you feel like you're unworthy of anything better, that this is your lot in life, that you must accept this. And that relates to this whole nonsense view of karma, that you have to accept your position in life, you know, in India and the caste system. So people can end up, because of this deeply nested sense of unworthiness and self-loathing that develops, it's not a conscious recognition of, oh, well, I'm not worthy because I'm living in an immoral condition of society and I'm not going to view myself too highly, so therefore I'm not going to fight for myself and my freedom. It's all done at a subconscious level. And the power comes when you have that conscious awareness of truly seeing reality for what it is and not living in the false reality. And I think I have, where did I have that one? Oh, I deleted all the previous images I had loaded. But I don't know, 5-6 episodes ago, I showed an old infographic I made about an alchemical divorce, and piercing through the false reality of, you think it's all a nice place and angels and everything. You pierce through that false reality to see the hell and the demon they were actually living in, and then you can work to deconstruct that more negative world that we live in to truly create the positive world that truly is the real world that you're going to create, rather than living in the fantasy of believing it's all sunshine, lollipops, and rose-colored glasses when it's actually not. So people can end up, this unworthiness and self-loathing, people can end up hating themselves in some way. There's this lack of self-love present because they feel they've been abandoned in some way. That, again, this doesn't have to be conscious. At a subconscious level, the real condition is immoral, and you're made to live in it. So you've been abandoned to that immoral condition. So you don't have a high sense of worth, of value, that you deserve more than this. So you end up in this self-loathing, this lack of self-love. You're abandoned in some way, and then that self-loathing, that self-hatred is hating themselves. So because of this self-loathing in that tree, you don't even know about this responsibility of, you don't even have the knowledge of evil, right? Where is it? There. You don't even have the knowledge of what evil is. You're not even aware of the presence of evil because you don't even have the knowledge of objective morality. And you can't even take on the responsibility of doing anything about it because you have this low evaluation of yourself, this low sense of worthiness because of the failure of the people who raised you, not raising you in this knowledge, and the wanting to take on the responsibility to do something about it because you value yourself enough and you love yourself enough and you care about yourself enough to want to engage in the behavior to try to do something to end that condition of the presence of evil that is enslaving you. And as such, as I mentioned before, that these are conditions of being a child and we are unraised. Low sense of self, not wanting responsibility in life, being ignorant of many things. That's a childlike mindset. And a childlike mindset wants others to be responsible for them. They want other people to take on responsibilities instead of them taking on all those responsibilities themselves. They want to pass the buck along. They want to say, well, no, you can go deal with this. I'm going to deal with this over here, and I want you to deal with this. I want you to deal with my protection. I want you to deal with taking care of me. And those are both aspects of what people want from government, from authority, is someone to protect them and someone to help take care of them. So you have the left, which is more the welfare state, and you have the right, which is the defense or offense. It used to be called the Department of War until it was euphemized and obfuscated into the Department of Defense. But that's what it's for. It's for war. It's not for defense. It's used as a means of engaging in warfare. So people want government in their life in order to fulfill the role of that missing parent who abandoned them, who didn't protect them, and didn't teach them to embody principles of self-defense themselves, to protect themselves, and to take on the responsibility of caring for themselves as an adult not having your parents care for you, not having your parents protect you. But since they didn't do that in your early life and didn't teach you to take on those responsibility yourself, that aspect of taking care of yourself, taking on responsibilities in life, and doing the work and defending yourself, well, you're still wanting that from someone else. You want it from the government. That missing parent, the ideal parent of who would have been there to protect you and defend you and try to do something about the enslavement that you were being subjugated to by being born into this world of enslavement. So those original parents failed to raise them into true adulthood. And that true adulthood is of not wanting a parent or anything else to take on the responsibility of taking care of them or protecting them. So they don't want that responsibility in full for themselves. So they want to offload that responsibility to others, the government, the authority, the politicians, the police, the military, this agency, that agency. They don't want it for themselves. They don't want to take it on for themselves, and they just want to pass it off to someone else who will do it. And all you have to do is, everyone, well, we're all going to take money from you, whether you want to or not. Even if you want that responsibility and you want to take it on yourself, you're not allowed, because we have a monopoly on dictating what people are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And we're going to decide, and we've decided that we're going to take on the responsibility of providing protection. We're going to take on the responsibility of welfare. So there's this group of people who play the parasitical game of being paid to at the highest level. They're not really doing anything. They're just managing things so that they can keep the system going, so that they can keep their nice cushy over $100,000 per year salary, so they can have the standard of living and the affluent lifestyle that it provides them. It's a nice cushy job to basically manage other people's lives who don't want to manage their own lives. And like I said, some people do want to manage their own lives and they want this responsibility, but they're denied that. And you're coerced into paying for these managers to keep managing you as children, because the majority want to be managed as children. They don't want to take on that responsibility, that full level of responsibility themselves, and have to figure it out, and have to cooperate with people and organize and do things in a voluntary basis. It's not being done in a voluntary basis. It's being done in a coercive capacity, where the money you earn, your employer plays the slavery game, as most all employers do within the system that they live in. And so part of your salary is being taken and given to government proactively. So all of us, we all have some abandonment. Hold on here, I just got to read what I said here. So we all have some level of abandonment, and for some of us it can be resolved or not resolved. But what matters is the level of the importance and the amount of that abandonment. So what is the thing that it was being abandoned? So how important was that thing, and how much of it was being abandoned? So for example, are you always there for your kids? No, you could be working. So you could maybe not even be at home. There's a form of abandonment, right? But how, in terms of what we're talking about here in this whole aspect of our condition and evil and ignorance of objective morality and fear of taking on that responsibility of living moral or teaching others, and that self-loathing, not being worthiness of not being worthy of freedom yourself and accepting your enslavement and that abandonment. If you're not always there for your kids because you can't always be there, or you're busy doing something, and then whatever they want from you is not being met, what's that level of importance? Well, it's not high up there on the importance in terms of what we're talking about of morality is the highest importance. And how much is that abandonment present? I work from home, and sometimes they're like, come do this with me, come do that. Well, I know I'm working. I can't just be with you the whole day. So I have to abandon them. They got to do things on their own. And, so on that level of importance, it's not that high level of importance of what's leading to this tree of evil. So we're not living in a perfect world where we can just, we talked about Star Trek a few times. We can have replicators and have food being produced and do something else, or I don't know what, and just always be there for our children all times of the day. And, maybe that would be a perfect world. I'm not saying it is. I'm just giving an idea. We're not living in a world where everything is provided for us so that we're always present for our children, to never have any aspect of any kind of, physically we're not there for them because we have to do work or something else. I'm not talking about that. But this is part of understanding this broad reach of what abandonment can be categorized within, what specific behavior can be categorized within the label of abandonment, and how important is it in terms of what we're talking about here in the tree of evil, and how much of it is going on. So, that level of perfect world, so-called, is it even possible? Maybe. But there's going to be times where you're not there and they're with others, or they're just left to themselves to play with toys or do something. So what matters is not being abandoned in raising the quality of their consciousness. Because that's what ultimately this tree of evil is representing at the bottom layer. The roots of the parental abandonment is this psychological, mental, emotional quality of consciousness that isn't being raised and remaining childlike, promoting a lack of self-love, of self-worthiness, of knowing what the condition of the world is, and knowing that you're worthy of better than living in that condition, that you care enough about yourself to not accept this condition of enslavement that you are in, and that others are in, and that your own children are in, and you're going to do something about it. And most of all, that quality of consciousness, that quality of moral knowledge, of moral truth, of objective morality, that's what matters the most in not abandoning children too, is raising their consciousness in quality truths, and most of all, the quality of moral truth, the quality truth of morality, of objective morality. Definitively knowing the difference between what is objectively right and wrong. So people are, in our society, are seeking a mother or father to care and protect them. That's the government. People are giving away the power and responsibility. They're subjugating, there's surrogate parents, the government, left and right, center, whatever party there is. All these systems of authority are giving your power away and giving your responsibility away to a surrogate parent that is desired. You want that surrogate parent to take on the responsibility, to have that power. And these are this desire is from these unresolved issues and this trauma of abandonment, of not having a parent that raised you, not having parental raising that we needed. We needed to be raised in a way to step into our true adulthood, and we were failed. We were let down. We were abandoned in those needs, that nurturing that we needed. So there's a lot of groups suffering from this. The order followers. These are categorizations that Mark Passio mentioned. So the order followers who just don't know, and they just don't want to know, and they have this deep level of self-loathing and hatred because they're perpetuating the system of enslavement. You have New Agers who are stuck in pacifism, who don't want self-defense, who don't want to know truth, who just want to live in an airy-fairy, positive mindset, avoiding the negative. The mainstream media, who just propagate lies for a paycheck, not actually knowing that, well, is what you're saying true or false? Doesn't really matter. They could believe it's true, but the point is they're just propagating things for a paycheck. And that's what order followers do. They're just doing things for a paycheck. Hey, you're going to take money to do things that are wrong. But as long as you're getting something out of it, then your ego is like, all right, well, if it's good for me, then I don't care how it's affecting other people. Just keep lying to yourself and believing that it's good. So keep doing it because you're getting paid. You're getting something out of it. And that's what matters is me, myself, and I. What am I getting out of this? It doesn't matter that it's doing wrong. I'm not even going to think about that. Not even going to try to figure out, well, is this actually right? Is this actually wrong? No. Don't want to know. That's that willful ignorance because you don't want the responsibility of knowing if you're actually doing something right or wrong, because then you'd have to actually feel guilty about doing something wrong and have the responsibility to change your behavior. And you don't care about that because you're in self-loathing and self-hatred, where you don't even care if you're doing something wrong, if you're harming even your own children, if you're propagating that system of enslavement yourself. And you have, religionists who just want to believe in bullshit because it makes them feel good that they're special and just believe in these nonsense beliefs and think that they're being moral in this false sense of morality, this just perverted term. And then everyone else believes that, oh, well, that's what morality is, what the religionists think is morality. And therefore morality is just bullshit. It's just this religious concept. So that's another way things get befuddled and confused. You got all the believers in government who just believe that's a good thing. All these people have been abandoned. And, scientismists, rigid skeptics who think that, well, the only truth out there is what's in government-funded research and grants and studies and papers and journals. Well, that's where the truth is. And people talking about other stuff, well, that's not true. It's not objective. It's not scientific. So therefore, it's not true. People who poo-poo philosophy because it's not like a hard science, or psychology because it's not a hard science. Well, these are all the people who are stuck in little boxes and can't get out of them. So in the end, the belief in government, authority, desiring authority, is people who want to be provided with the care or protection that they did not get and that they weren't raised to want to provide for themselves, to take on that responsibility to provide for themselves. So that's going to wrap up this final segment, final episode on the Tree of Evil, part 3. This was on that final root, parental abandonment. I hope you enjoyed the content, and I will end this episode in the immortal words of Mark Passio.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
One more time.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
Get out there and do the work so that this world isn't such a hellhole. So that this tree of evil changes. It doesn't keep propagating. Start putting more of that good. It's good fruits that aren't going to poison us, and change the fruit, change the tree from a tree of evil to a tree of good. Obviously, it's going to be a slow process. Could be instant, but all that requires moral knowledge, and hence the need for the great work to be done by more people who have gotten over their parental abandonment, done the self-work, the self-respect to get over the self-loathing, develop more self-love, to care about themselves and others enough to not want to be enslaved, to not want others to be enslaved, to want to end our enslavement, and instead of fearing the responsibility of that work, take on the burden of the responsibility of that work, develop the knowledge of objective morality, and put out that knowledge for others to engage in that same process. So we'll see you next week. And thanks for tuning in. Take care. Peace.